Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Ripple Hangout. My name is Dylan Lowe, and I am the project leader of the Ripple movement. So, as per customary, and I'm definitely going to switch the screen back around so that you can see where I am at the moment. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Dylan Lowe once again, and I am the project leader of the Ripple Movement project. So, what we are is that we are a travel media collaborative where we are aiming to use travel blogging as a way of raising awareness about various social issues. So we've got things like environmental conservation, responsible travel, impact to consumerism, nomadic communities, food anthropology, architecture, and so on and so forth. But this particular hangout isn't about any of those that I've just mentioned. The majority of them had their spotlight already during some of our previous hangouts, which you can definitely go and rewatch on YouTube. This particular session itself, this particular episode, is about disability, and it is about the two projecteers on the Ripple movement this year who are going to be representing those. And what we're going to have for the next hour, basically, are two very personal accounts of two travelers who are living with disabilities and traveling with it, and basically through what they do in travel media and blogging and social media and so on and so forth, hope to raise awareness about their respective disabilities and even disabilities on the whole. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight to you, Ábhishek. Say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ábhishek. Yeah.
And we also have Cherie.
Hi, hello. My name is Cherie.
And Cherie's also going to be signing her answers as well, I believe. So for anybody who might be watching, that's kind of a very useful thing to have. If anybody who's a sign language person, or if you know sign language at all, can watch this, that'll be fantastic. So the other customary bit, and I think Ábhishek's already got an answer at the back of his head because he has indeed been watching some of the previous episodes. The other customary bit that we do with each of these hangouts is that I'm going to ask the projecteers what they had for breakfast this morning. So, Ábhishek, what did you have?
Yeah, I was waiting for that question. Thanks, Dylan, for that. I would have loved to have an Indian breakfast. I'm based in Scotland, in Edinburgh, but sadly can't have an Indian breakfast. So, with my health, I think I stick on to oats in the morning. That's what I had. I didn't have a deep fried any and everything. Out here in a full Scottish can be deep fried, but I stuck to oats in the morning with some fruit and some yogurt. Yeah, so that's my breakfast in the morning. Healthy.
And then what about you, Cherie? Because also the other thing to those viewers out there is that I'm actually going to try to enunciate this time and slow down my dialogue as well, because Cherie's sister Fox is actually very kindly agreeing to sign for Cherie, so she's in the background flapping her hands around. So Cherie, without dragging on any further, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
The power went out this morning, so I have not had the chance to really cook breakfast. Don't feel like been crazy this morning, but yeah, so I didn't really have anything. But yeah.
And it's still very early for you as well, isn't it? Because one of the reasons why as I kind of mentioned in the previous hangout episodes as well, is asking all our projecteers what they had for breakfast is really a good way of establishing a sense of place as well. So for Cherie, what time is it where you are and where are you?
I am in Idaho right now. Yeah, so it's about 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Yeah.
And then with you, Ábhishek, it's closer to 5 o'clock, because you at the moment are in Edinburgh, hence all the deep fried goodies and things like that you can't possibly touch.
No.
I know exactly how tempting they are sometimes, actually, especially for the first thing in the morning as well. So I'm going to go straight into talking a little bit about what you guys do and who you are. So with you, Ábhishek, I'm particularly curious about because you have had multiple sclerosis for 30 years, and that's what you mentioned in your interview and all the things that you've written, either on your own website and for the Ripple movement. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, what's life like with multiple sclerosis, and how are you now using your brand spanking new website, Traveling with MS, to basically document it?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Firstly, I don't have it for 30 years. I've had it for 15 years, in a way. But I run a blog. I used to do a lot of wildlife conservation blogging at one time. And then this is about 10, 15 years back, and it hit me with multiple sclerosis then. And I'm still very much a part of the travel industry. So I do a lot of consultancies for a lot of businesses. And one particular business that I work still is in wildlife tourism. We have about 8 to 10 lodges in India and Nepal around tiger reserves. So I do have a very active, put it that way, traveling life. But speaking to a lot of fellow bloggers, and they all knew, a few bloggers, I don't want to name names here, but they knew about my problems, and they used to tell me, oh, why don't you come for a blogging trip? And I used to say, no, I can't, it'll be quite tiring for me, it'll be this for me, it'll be that for me. One of my particular friends who used to be in Edinburgh, and he's a very good friend of yours as well, and the others, I don't want to name him, but he said, why don't you use your MS for your advantage? Don't use it as a problem for you. So when you travel, you basically, wherever you're traveling, you can document about how you're undergoing the problems, what problems you're facing, and use it for your own advantage, put it that way. So that's the reason why I set up. Finally, it took me years to open up to people, to tell people that I had multiple sclerosis. I used to not tell anyone. I used to live in a closet, feeling very scared to tell people what they'll feel about me. They may laugh at me, or they may say I'm on a wheelchair. And those are the things which a lot of people don't like mentioning. It's a very personal thing. And set up Traveling with MS partly because I have a lot of support from my family, my parents, my sister's family, my wife's family. They're very, very supportive. So when all my circle is so secure, why should I hide in that closet? I want to go out and tell the world. And this is something which currently I'm on medication. That's the very reason, and I do apologize that this chat is a bit early than the normal scheduling, but because this week I think it's the medication, and it becomes very difficult for me to have a chat at 7 p.m. Partly because I'm in a process of medication, but right now it's fine for me to have a chat, put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's the very reason I set it up.
Yeah. I do apologize for actually misquoting that you had MS for 30 years. In fact, you had 15. I know that. The sleeplessness and everything working on the Ripple movement is actually just making me go bananas a little bit. But that's the thing, though. Like, when you actually did eventually come out with MS, and one of the most mesmerizing ways you've done that was when you did a Periscope broadcast. And you actually managed to get quite a sizable audience to come and actually tune in and listen to what you actually have to say, which wasn't, anything grandioso or anything like that. It was just you sitting at home, just having a good chat on social media, and basically telling people about not just your condition, but basically the complexities of medications and things like that. And you actually did attract quite a bit of interaction as well. There are people actually asking you questions as well. I mean, how was that for you?
Yeah, meaning I've been following a lot of people with MS on social media, and I'm quite fascinated with the way they inject on YouTube. It's quite a lot of people who go into injections feel scared, to take a needle, and these so-called videos may be helping them, maybe they help them, or I don't know. but there are many on social media. So I thought, why not try Periscope and not take an injection, but just speak about MS. So I wanted to see what I gain, and it was pretty interesting. I started chatting with people who had multiple sclerosis, but they were based in the US, and they were talking about their medication with me, and they were talking. And I felt like really, it was quite inspiring actually to hear their insights to how they undergo problems every day or every second day, and they get there's certain side effects to the medication that they're on. And for me, it was just a one-off video that I did, but I learned quite a bit from there, from Periscope.
Yeah, and speak about inspiring as well. So I was actually recently in New York, where I was basically speaking kind of on behalf of the Ripple movement as well at the New York Travel Festival. And one of the people I actually met during the festival itself was a woman who actually did a lot of work for deafness, for deaf people, and actually making travel accessible for them within New York City itself. And as we were having this conversation, she was talking about this girl who was recently featured in an Apple iPad advertising, basically a travel writer who is deaf and have been traveling around the world, and basically telling her story of how that came about. And guess what, guys? Those of you who are watching right now, we actually have that very person with us today, right now, and that's Cherie right here. So, Cherie, before we talk a little bit more about, the Apple advertising and, the amazing things you've done for deafness and sign language and all that, just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you find your travels, how your own personal journey is being documented on your blog, and how much are you using that currently to raise awareness about deafness and sign language. My bad.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, I was attempted to go on a trip to Europe with people-to-people program, and I was really excited because I was like, oh my God, like it would be great. I'm gonna go to Europe for the first time. I've always wanted to go. And what happened was when I was, researching online because my first time, and I was really nervous because like, what am I going to do? And I found out there was no resources for the deaf. For traveling, there was nothing online or anything. So I decided to start my blog and started to write about my travels with the deaf person because I wanted other people to get the experience of get the information and the resources that I didn't have. And I traveling is a big part of my life. I've been traveling ever since I was like born, basically, and it has been a years with traveling with the disability. It's hard because there's not a lot of people out there with the awareness, the proper awareness. Like one time, I was at the airport, and I needed help to go to my next gate. And I told the person behind the counter, I was like, I'm deaf, but I need, the help to get to the next gate in the really large airport. I was like, okay, yeah, no problem, it'll be fine. And when I got to my gate, they had a person there with a wheelchair, and I was shocked. I was shocked that I told them I was deaf, and they showed up with a wheelchair, and there's not a proper awareness for how to treat people with deafness. They just don't know how to handle it. And they were like, oh, well, here's a wheelchair, and it was very alarming for me to realize that there was no education for the deaf community and how to treat them, and that's why I wanted to change that. So yeah.
And that's very much what you do. Spend a lot of time speaking about on your blog as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I spend a lot of time writing about it on my blog and sharing my experiences, and I'm trying to encourage other people to travel and not to be afraid, of the language barrier. Because just because there's a language barrier, it's not mean that you can't, travel, you can, experience other, cultures, and I really try to encourage other people to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And to those of you viewers out there, I'm just going to give you a bit of a background. As opposed to all the other Ripple Hangouts, so it's sort of just a first-time occurrence, with this particular one, this one specifically about disabilities, it's almost as if it's actually a continuation of a different Hangout, except it isn't hosted by us, the Ripple Movement, but it was hosted by Alistair McKenzie from Travel Coffee Break. And we actually managed to get one session going on about a month ago, and it featured precisely the same people with Ábhishek and Cherie, and we had a lengthy discussion about disabilities and traveling with disabilities back then. And from memory, and as a continuation of what Cherie's just said, quite often with disabilities, a lot of them are hidden disabilities. I mean, you don't actually get to see them from the outside. So as opposed to, when you see a person with sunglasses and a stick walking around, and you would, have the awareness that that person might be blind, or somebody who might be on a wheelchair, then you would automatically associate that person as disabled. But there are disabilities out there with deafness, certainly, until somebody maybe sees the hearing aid on the side, or indeed with multiple sclerosis as well to a certain extent, because, I guess you can see people limping along, but you don't immediately associate that as a disease, as something that people have to live through. So with you, Ábhishek, and I'm going to go and get an answer from both of you, actually. When you travel, how often do you find that people, upon first glance, not have an awareness of the sufferings you are having, the pains you're in, and basically how much of a struggle it is?
A very, very good question you've picked up here, Dylan. I think just to add to what Cherie just said about the wheelchair and the ways the airlines handle that is, I wouldn't say it's lack of education, I think it's shocking. Especially with disabilities that are hidden. A hidden disability, like myself, I have been pushed around when you walk through the so-called, the sardines of people entering the aircraft. So what I normally do is I sign up for a disability access, but then the options that we get is either you want a wheelchair, or you basically are hearing aid, or visually impaired, or you have some other form of impairment. But it is basically the focus is only on that wheelchair. Now, that is something which airlines seriously need to get their answers right. So what I do is I go up to the counter and I say that, sorry, I don't need a wheelchair, thankfully not right now, but British Airways doesn't give that option. And can I please go in with the old people, or with people with like children and with the babies and stuff, and then I can board with them if that's okay, because I struggle in terms of walking and I can fall. And that back to the same thing is that that's the only thing which I normally do whenever because I travel about 20 days in a month now, and I always do that with aircrafts now. I have to.
You know what? Like from what I'm hearing from you, I'm actually really interested in perhaps getting a piece off you as well on the Ripple Movement website, where you talk a little bit about airline accessibility. I think that's a very interesting topic a very interesting point that you mentioned, and it would be a lot easier to get attention as well when that's committed to words, and we can sort of send it off to the airlines and hopefully get a response from them, and hopefully might even be a reaction, or some actual infrastructure being put into place for that particular thing. Now, going to you, Cherie, what do you find when it comes down to when you're traveling and people encountering you, and upon first impression, how aware would they normally be about your own impairment?
Well, here's the thing though. I have the problem at the airport where there's not like a lot of options where, it's like I have to tell them every time I go to the counter, I'm deaf. I need to warn, only I can't hear the announcement. I have no idea what scenes are being announced, and but I have to tell them, and they're like, oh, okay, and then most of the time they forget. And do I have to stand right by the counter and stare at them to make them know, to let me know? And that is a bit frustrating because there's no awareness, especially airports or airlines. They don't understand the need of they're not deaf people. Like if I fly, they don't have the closed caption, and I feel like there's no closed captions on the videos, but there's 5 other languages, and English, subtitles, and don't understand why that there's like 5 different languages, but no English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing. And like when I travel, it's hard because they don't see, they don't see the hearing, they don't realize that I'm deaf. I have to tell them, and sometimes I'm sad, and if I can't understand them the first time, and I'll be like, why? And they get sometimes they get bit of an attitude, and then I have to tell them, look, I'm deaf. I couldn't understand you, and then most of the time they think, oh, I'm sorry, and it's very difficult and hard, and like if you don't see the hearing, they just don't. They have no awareness at all. Yeah.
And one of the things that was actually mentioned a lot as well during actually even the majority of the Google Hangouts we've had this entire week, especially when there's the implication of travel responsibility, is that it's very much a thing of the 2 sides of the coin as well. What you two have just talked about is travel accessibility, and that's very much sort of on the industry side, on the provider side. So we're talking about airlines, we're talking about hotels, accommodations, all that, tours, museums, places that have accessibility and facilities and all that in place. But then there's also the other side of the coin as well, the consumers. Now, do you have any particular encounters with fellow travelers who may not have the same, well, I would say not the same, but adequate, I would say, sympathy and understanding of your conditions? What kind of reactions do you usually find when you travel and meet these fellow travelers? Cherie, I'm going to go with you.
The reaction, they vary. When they find out about when I'm deaf, I tell them, and most of the time, often they apologize because they don't have anything for me because they didn't even know what I needed. Like if I go to the other travelers, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm going to go to Ábhishek very quickly first. So, what kind of people do you usually encounter on the road who's gaining awareness about your?
The other. Right. Okay.
That's all right.
Yep, Cherie,
okay.
Go ahead.
Cherie, go ahead. Yep.
Okay. Do it. When I talk to other travelers, and they really do understand when I talk to them, and most of the time they're really excited to learn about it. Sometimes they tell me, oh, I have my connection. Like, oh, my cousin is deaf, or my brother, from from my family and stuff, and they'll tell me about their experiences. I'll have that connection to talk to them, and I love it when I talk to other travelers and they know some sign language, and they get really excited, and they're like they try to show me how to they're just really, I really do enjoy don't
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Cherie. What about you, Ábhishek? What kinds of travelers that you encounter on the road that, upon becoming aware of your conditions, what kind of reaction do you usually get, and what kind of sympathy would you get, and understanding as well, naturally?
Yeah. I think most of them are pretty shocked. Firstly, to start with, hidden disease normally would you look quite all right. Yeah, there's no problem in you. You look absolutely fine. Yeah, but there is some problem. It takes them time. Most of them, which I've encountered, do not know what it is all about. So you got to explain them from, like, oh, you know how electric wires, electric wires have coating. They have rubber, like, they have a coating on it, or plastic coating, and inside they have copper wires. So our nerves are like that as well in our body. And it's basically when you have disease in your body, you have a bacteria in your body, so your immune system fights it to shoo it out. Yeah. In my scenario, my body thinks my central nervous system is basically a bacteria, and it starts fighting it. So you have to come out with ways, simple ways to teach people what MS is all about. And it takes quite a lot of hours to explain them, and not with everyone. Most of them do know about it. There are some people who I've met their family, some of them in their family have MS. Most of them that I've met have had very severe MS, which they are in their late 50s, 60s, and they are on wheelchairs, and they cannot walk, and in those ways. It's basically it's about every person who has multiple sclerosis experiences MS in a different way. Everyone is not the same. One or the other is not the same. And to be very frank, you spoke about consumers or normal people, what they think about the whole scenario. Let's turn it to their side. There are two forms of disability. One is the medical model, and one is the social model. Now, we see on the social model side that it is not the patient or the person's fault that the person is deaf, or the person is visually impaired, or the person has a disability. A social model will say, please change, have accessible, access for wheelchair. That is a social model. But the medical model will say, well, it is their fault, we can't change.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding. It's about understanding. It's about what the individual looks at disability in that form. Either they look at it as a social form, and Dylan, you look at it from a social point of view, absolutely. So does a lot of people with disability look at it from a social point of view. But when it comes to people who are not interested in disability, they look at it from a medical point of view, saying it is your fault, you have a disability, what can we do? We can't do anything. And this happens a lot on buses. You sit on a bus, I sit on the old people or maybe the disabled place because I don't want to go up on the double-decker buses because I can fall. And now there's no space there to sit down, And there is one old person standing, I give them my seat and I'll stand. Sometimes my situation is so bad that I sit there. But people stare at me and they say, why the hell aren't you getting up? Give that seat to the old man. And that is something which a medical model would be doing.
Yeah.
Or maybe the person is seeing me not as disabled.
Yeah.
Because I look absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, so meaning it's a lot of lack of education.
Yeah.
Lack of education in a lot of places.
Yeah. And it's a very interesting point that you just mentioned there, along the lines of when you talked about how, in the medical model, it's all about people looking at you and just go, okay, so you deal with it, right? And considering that, what are your taglines for Traveling with MS, the website and the independent project themselves, is you want to reach out to people and say that disability is the new ability.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm thinking on the top of my head, and this is something that I can say both of you would absolutely agree, and on the top of my head I can think of ways how this statement would be true, but I'm going to leave you guys to make your own cases, is that disability isn't so much the new ability, but disability is the new ability of adaptability, because then you have a condition, you have that impairment, but you obviously would try to compensate it with other ways. So for instance, with blindness, then blind people tend to be more acute than the other senses, and so they would compensate with their hearing, with their sense of smell, with a sense of touch. So from that note, I'm going to go with you, Cherie. Out of your own disability, what are the ways? How are the ways that you've learned to adapt, and how do you try to be able to deal with everyday life, and indeed traveling and getting exposed to new environments as well? How do you deal with that, and what have you actually learned from being, with your respective disabilities?
The with my deafness, I have learned to be much more observant. I have to be much more observant than the normal person. Like if I'm walking in the streets and the car coming, I won't be able to hear the car, and I have to be really observant of everything. I have to watch the airport, to watch people, and people watch things. Okay, I see about to board the plane. Then I'm able to. I have to get up. I have to be really on all the time, and I have had to adapt because of that. And I use everything to my resources. Like if I have my phone or iPad or whatever I have, I use anything that I can, like apps or Twitter and anything. And I have to adapt to that. And I have to read lips, and so I think it made me much more observant, which is good because it's like it taught me in my writing, it taught me in all aspects of my life, and it's been that's how I do have to adapt a lot, and it's hard, but it's tough. So.
Yeah, and I do have to chirp in and say that Cherie's lip reading abilities are absolutely fantastic. I actually personally spent a month living with Cherie here in London, and the fact that I am entirely sign language illiterate, I do not know a single sign language sign, except that she has managed to basically get about 80% of the words that I say, and I do speak with, for all of you who can hear it, a very rather British accent as well. So it is something that she adapts to very quickly. And it is astonishing to see that, whilst people would not have the same adaptability in normal day lives, having actually a slight impairment or disability actually allows you to think more on your feet and observe on your feet. And, indeed, to a certain extent, that actually allows you to travel better as well, because then everybody's being thrown into a completely alien environment, and, you've got this adaptability instinct kicking in. Who's going to be better at it? Now, I'm going to go to you, Ábhishek, with the same question as well. So, how do you adapt to the amount of strenuous travel? And for you as well, it's particularly physical as well. How do you adapt to that? And especially, almost ironically as well, because you were involved in wildlife conservation. So, you can only assume that it is very strenuous, very physical. So, how did you adapt?
Yeah, I think waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning has all changed, especially for the tiger safaris. Yeah, meaning adaptability. I think the ability that you spoke about. I think adaptability on one side. For me, it is first is acceptance. To accept that I have a problem. I wouldn't say it's a problem. That is not the right word to say it's a problem. It is just the ability. What abilities do I have left in terms of working, and how do I adapt around it?
A challenge, let's say.
Like a challenge. Yeah. So basically, I believe in something called the spoony theory, and I don't know if Cherie knows of it or you know of it. It's a very it'll be very quick to explain what it is. It basically describes disability, because this is an example which is a spoony theory, is very commonly used in a lot of places where I work in a disabled place. We openly talk about it there. It was about in the US, a girl had a disability and she was sitting and having dinner with her friend. And a friend asked her, so how is your disability? What is it for you? And she said, okay, what she did was she picked up all the spoons on the table and other tables as well, and she had about 12 to 15 spoons. And she said, this is my day for me. So whatever task I do, my 1 spoon goes. I get up in the morning, I make breakfast, my 1 spoon goes. When you're normal, you don't think about these spoons. You don't think about your tasks. You know, you do your tasks without realizing that it can affect your body. You can get tired. Once your spoons are gone, you are basically dead. You have to sleep. You know, so that spoony theory describes disability in a very good way. So you've got to be very, very systematic in what tasks you do, so that you have that 1 remaining spoon before you go off to sleep. So that 1 spoon adds to another spoon, adds to another spoon, and then for me, it adds to a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it is all about accepting what you have. With adaptability, you spoke about the adaptability bit, like for me, heat. Like, you know, I was watching around yesterday it was 21 degrees in Edinburgh. It's pretty hot at 21, not like Delhi 50 degrees. 50 degrees is dying. Out here, 21 is dying for me as well. So 21 degrees, I was walking slowly. I was walking and I was seeing people in Princess Gardens sitting and relaxing in the sun. You know, they were wearing their shades and nicely enjoying the sun. And I thought to myself that I need the shade. I wish I can sit like that, you know, because MS and heat don't go hand in hand. And with heat, my body becomes jelly. Yep. You know, it becomes jelly like crazy. And when it becomes jelly, then I can't walk. You know, I'm like literally, like I'm basically drunk. I'm like about 5 pints down.
Not to mention that your medication also has an
effect.
Optimum temperature as well that cannot exceed. Well, basically, it doesn't really work in room temperature, does it?
Yeah, meaning the medication that I'm on, I can keep it to 18 to 21 degrees in room temperature.
Okay.
But there are certain medications where you have to put it in the fridge, so you have to always carry, you know, an ice box. If I'm on that, basically. So there are a lot of people who I know are on those medication and they have to inject every day, basically. In that case.
Okay, thank you, Ábhishek. That's a really good 2 sides of the same equation as well, because there's actually, you know, there's Cherie talking a little bit about the physical challenges and the physical adaptabilities, and then there's Ábhishek actually talking about the mind as well, because it is very much a 2-side thing, isn't it? It's all about being able to handle it physically and being able to handle it mentally as well. And those are indeed the challenges of living and actually as well as traveling with disability as well. So before we go on further with this discussion about sort of the more disabilities themselves, as much as I'm really enjoying this debate at the moment, I'm going to talk a little bit about your respective independent projects. So I want to really get to know, and I'm sure that the viewers will want to get to know about how you're going to be documenting your independent projects, how you're going to be documenting about your respective disabilities, and what kind of message you like to send out there, and what kind of social impact you hope to achieve with these images. Messages, sorry. Not a good day for words for me, apparently. So if I can start with you, Cherie, with your particular project, Talking Hands, which is, for me, one of the most beautifully named independent projects we have, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really excited to start that project because I wanted to start the education of, you know, the deaf culture, and, you know, learning about sign language and language, and know how the how how some culture don't allow sign language as an visual language, and I wanted to educate them because my project is about sign language and where it started, how it evolved over time, and yeah, and I'm be documenting about that through the Ripples, and I'll be filming and be sharing my experiences with other deaf cultures around the world, and I just really hope that I raise the awareness of the needs of deaf travelers and deaf cultures around the world, because there's so much that people don't realize, that don't understand about deaf culture, and how we how to work hard to adapt to the modern world, and it can be really exhausting sometimes, and people don't realize that, and I really try to get the message out there that that yeah, so yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that you've just mentioned in your description of Talking Hands is that you are very much talking about a deaf culture. Now, a lot of people sort of tend to think that deafness are isolated cases. Quite often, deaf people tend to think that they're very much alone. But in order to have a culture, it must consist of people. It must consist of social interaction. It must consist of people who can relate to the single thing. And you're very much right about, when you said that you want to go and document the sign language as well. Tell us a little bit about, because from my understanding, you want to go and retrace the origins of sign language as well, and indeed is very much a culture, because it is a thing that's happened within human history that doesn't just consist of one person doing something, but whole communities around the world doing something and building something and creating something that has a lasting legacy. So tell us a little bit more about the retracing of the origin of sign language segment of your journey.
The origin of sign language, I will be starting in advance, where sign language originated because there were two deaf girls that were they created their own sign language, and what happened was a monk walked by and saw them, and there was society, and really interested, walked up to them and like, what are you guys doing? And he learned the language, and then he took that language and taught it to a mass, following of people that were deaf, that they had their own sign language, and he taught them that. Well, what happened to be one American, man who learned the sign, and then he took that sign to America, where he founded a school for the deaf that still run today. And it's really fascinating to me to see the different impacts of sign language, how it evolved, because now America's sign language came from France, and how it evolved, because now we have our own sign and French sign language, and then we have British sign language, which is completely different than America's sign language. And I wanted to teach the different signs of the world, and that it's not exactly the same worldwide. And yeah, I really want to educate on the different signs. And yeah.
I would think that British language and American Sign Language would be similar, but they're not at all, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And you talked a little bit about the impact of sign language as well, and that is where a lot of people tend to forget that there is a revolution of sign language. There's an evolution of it. I mean, sign language has not been the same exact language as it was invented in that, taught by the monk in a monastery. It's actually traveled as people spread out around the world. It's traveled across the Atlantic, ended up in America, the same way that the people in Britain would speak differently to the people in America. Sign language, similarly, would have had a similar journey where it's actually gone to another continent and with an ocean separating the two, would have had their own development for 200-300 years. And so, the differences and the similarities of different forms of sign language is another thing that you are going to be investigating. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes, I would be investigating that, and that would be really, yeah, I'd be investigating that.
Yeah. And what kind of conclusion do you think that you're going to come to at the end of your journey? I mean, out of I can only assume that it's going to be an extremely harrowing experience for you to go all the way back to the very location where sign language is invented, and then go on to investigate the similarities and differences of different types of sign language. I mean, what do you hope to achieve, and what kind of conclusion do you want to reach?
Well, that's the thing, that the conclusion of the gosh, they kind of really I don't know, kind of hard, kind of like the conclusion, because I don't know what the outcome will be, because I feel like the thing is, like, I want to yeah, I think in the journey for me, that I want to learn about the different signs. Because people ask me all the time, is sign language is universal, and what I want to investigate, is it really universal? Is it really so different? Is it really like to indicate on
You've been able to talk to people in different countries that know different sign, like when you were in Sweden, and also, was it China you talked to someone?
Yeah, and American China, I'm able to communicate with deaf girl, but the thing is that she could not speak at all, and she only knew the Chinese sign language, and somehow we were able to sign and figure out what we were trying to say, and it was really fascinating for me to hear her about, to communicate with someone that had no knowledge of English signs or anything, and was still able to figure out what we were trying to talk about, and it really fascinated me, and I really wanted to investigate that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Cherie, the fact that you said that you don't know yet what the conclusion of your project is actually a really good sign, because that means that you are going to be basing a lot of your independent projects on your own personal journey, and obviously that's yet to be determined. And so the people that you're going to encounter along the way, you have no way of predicting. So it's great to hear that it's going to be very much a sort of a storytelling perspective as well, that your journey is about to be, and it's going to be not just about presenting facts. It's not just about criticizing about accessibility in different places, but it's all about your own emotional reaction to all these interactions you're going to have in the future, all these people you're going to speak to, and all these things that you're going to find out. So very looking forward to seeing your journey, myself in particular. This is actually one of the projects that I actually do really have my eyes on as well. So I'm going to go to you, Ábhishek, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what you want to do with Sclerotic Footprints, and the kind of things that you want to achieve and the messages you want to reach out, and what kind of social impact are you hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah, mine is not as inspiring as Cherie's. Cherie's is really inspiring. Mine is boring, put it that way. But no, it's. I think I'm quite. I wouldn't say I'm scared, but I'm actually. I do not want to make it very depressive. I'll be very clear about it, because I'm following a path which I could be in their place later on in life. If I am following a path of people on wheelchairs and documenting about them, there is no, I do not know what my future holds for my disease. And it could be very emotionally very challenging for me. And I'm quite nervous, put it that way, rather than being scared for sclerotic, which is quite good, because it gives me a pathway in terms of focusing on people who are inspiring with a disease that they're living with right now, and it helps me to focus on an inspiring pathway as well, and travel does that. Travel inspires. If you have travel as an inspiration, it removes all the negativity. That is positive. It has to be, because depression is one big thing which multiple sclerosis has. And I am not a depressive person at all. I'm very, very positive on a lot of things. And that is my goal in life, is to be positive. I'm never negative. So with sclerotic footprints, and the name does sound quite depressive. Thanks, Dylan, for coming up with that. But meaning it is something which I think I can walk. I'll be very clear. I can walk. I cannot run as good, but I can walk. And I think footprints is something which a lot of people with MS don't have. Some people can't walk. A lot of people can't walk. They're on wheelchairs. And I think for me, it gives me a path for identifying journeys that these people are folding, are undergoing, and there is no one to document them. So there's no documentation. There is nothing for, and even medical science they don't even have a cure for it. And not that I'm going to find a cure, but I'm just trying to see where this journey takes me. And it's a very, very personal journey, put it that way, which I would love to do responsible tourism. I've done that for 18 years. I can't do that. I think Cherie and Mary Allen is doing that. But apart from that, meaning wildlife conservation, environmental management I could do. But that's not the point. The point here is it is my own personal journey. And with sclerotic footprints, everyone experiences multiple sclerosis in a different form. And that is very, very interesting to see. But it doesn't have to be depressive. It has to be inspiring, this journey. So I'm going to be using a lot of blog posts. I'm going to be doing, actually this weekend I'll be writing for the MS Society, for the MS Asian Society, which luckily the Trishna Bardia, now a good friend, who was in the People Strictly, she danced in People Strictly, has multiple sclerosis, and she was very kind enough to ask me to write about my journeys. So I'm writing up something for her, and I would be mentioning about the Ripple movement and sclerotic footprints in that, so that people who have multiple sclerosis know about the Ripple movement, as well as for sclerotic footprints to be a part of my journey, which will be quite interesting to see see the different side of family life, as Asian families are supported more by parents, and Western family would be like, boy and girl are out, and they have to look after themselves. Scenarios change because a child is sick. They get more nurture, love and care is more in Asian households, and things can be a bit challenging for people with multiple sclerosis there. So it'll be quite interesting to see that path.
And like you said, it's very much a sort of a personal journey for you, isn't it? And in that case, it's very much what you talked a lot about as well, about the positivity of the mind, the idea of the mind over matter sort of thing. And it is very admirable actually for basically being in that position where you have a disability, you are feeling the pain, you are feeling the jabs that you're going to have to take every night, and the medication's kicking in. But you're perfectly right. I mean, there are people who may suffer more on the severity scale, and there are people who might still be able to do it. And for you as well, I can definitely see that observation that, you are sort of just taking advantage of the fact that you are slightly further on the more favorable side of the severity scale, and you still have your accessibility. You can still walk, and you can still travel, and you still can go to places, albeit with difficulty. And so, yeah, I mean, is that something that you're going to talk a little bit about, the whole psychology, the philosophy of making the most out of your life? Yep. Whilst you have that newfound sense of appreciation of life, because you can see your spoons being taken away from you one after another.
Yeah, no, I would agree with what you just said. Meaning, it's something which the journey follows. It's a personal journey. It's a personal experience. But what it normally does is it inspires myself in seeing other people undergoing so much of problems, but they are so inspiring themselves. So it helps me to live a better life, put it that way. So I started traveling with MS on my own personal agenda. I had nothing to do with writing posts. I didn't want to do too much of a thing. I just said, okay, I'll do a little bit of photography, do a little bit of interviews, write a little bit of multiple sclerosis, that's fine. But when you came along, you actually pushed me to start doing this. And I think thanks, Dylan, to get me on board, because by having sclerotic footprints, I think what it's done is it's helped traveling with MS, partly because it's given me a new pathway to experience a psychological or a social side of things, which the medical model doesn't give in multiple sclerosis. It doesn't give that. And I think interviews, I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews with people. I'm going to be putting, hopefully, try and get a lot of charities on board. I am going to be doing some work with the MS Shift, which is another charity, which is doing their Twitter handle. I'm going to be looking after that. But coming back to the point, I think there are certain charities which are doing some amazing work for multiple sclerosis, and they need to be applauded, the work that they're doing, put it that way.
Yep. And thanks for sharing all of that, Ábhishek. It's extremely inspiring as well to hear from the words of somebody who's actually deep in MS and having the actual challenge of being able to travel and all that, and actually not being able to travel per se. I'm going to pose a similar question to you, Cherie. So for you, actually, how privileged do you feel when you are traveling with a disability, but yet still have the ability to travel?
No, good question.
I feel very lucky, because when I was growing up, I would travel all the time. My mom would take me on road trips, and she would never. I never saw a problem with traveling, and she never told me that there was a problem traveling, and I felt like it was a good thing for me, because I was able to travel in a really young age, and I never thought anything different of it. So when I grew up and I had people talk to me like, oh, well, it must be really, really hard for you to travel. Like, why do you do it? Like, that must be really difficult. And I have to tell them, like, this is what I love to do. This is what makes me happy. And I feel like that it really helps me a lot, to be able to adapt, to be able to learn other culture, and learn. I'm really excited about that project, because I want to learn more about my culture, and and other people. Other people's journey, their experience, their culture, and I wanted to learn, and I want to educate other people, and and it's a really the project that's really near and dear to my heart, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So.
Yeah, and
I think
myself. Yeah,
I think just to add to what Cherie has just said, I think she's said something really important. I think it's all about a learning curve with disability. I think it's as ourselves both, we are learning as we travel about how other people are experiencing, undergoing the same scenarios as our individuals ourselves, and how they overcome. And it's all about a learning path, put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and the same way, I'm just going to borrow your term, Ábhishek, about coming out of the closet with a disability as well. Sometimes you actually do have to physically get out of the closet, don't you? Because unless you physically experience how life is like on the other side of the closet, then there's no way of knowing how to live with it. And it's a new thing. The same way that traveling, exposing you to new things, is a good way of speeding up the process of being able to deal with things, the adaptability and all that. And being able to cope with life in general. And by the end of the day, we all cope with life in our own individual way, but it doesn't mean that we can't relate to each other, that we can't share some of these challenges, and more importantly, convey the message, convey the stories. Sorry, Ábhishek, you were saying something just now. What was it that you wanted to add?
No, just about the closet thing. It was meaning it's something which. You're right. I think, yes, there were two sides to the coin. At one side, yeah, you're living a normal life, and then suddenly it hits you, and you have to go into a disability life or whatever you want to call it. And again, that thing comes in about acceptance, that you have to accept that you have a disability, and it takes time to come out. But when it does come out, make the maximum of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is
That is a fantastic message, actually. So. Everyone who are watching right now, so we're actually just approaching 6:03. So I do want to kind of wrap it up here. But before I do that, actually, I just thought about something that would be really interesting to do right now for Ábhishek and Cherie. So with you two, I would like you to sum it up in one sentence. If you are basically trying to say something, a message to your fellow sufferers of multiple sclerosis or your fellow deaf people, what would your one sentence message be? Who would like to start?
Well, I think my sentence would be like you can break the language barrier. Like thank you to break it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ábhishek?
I think positivity. I think that is something which people should have, especially with, I'm just speaking from a multiple sclerosis point of view. Depression, as I said earlier, is the biggest, it's one of the only diseases which has the maximum depression. Simple things like even buttoning up your shirt, a lot of people can't do. And that can be really, really frustrating for a lot of people. And you have to have the positivity, and I think it's difficult to have positivity. It's very easy to say positivity, but I think you need to start seeing other people who are in a worse situation than you are, and then get inspired that you are actually quite lucky to have what you have, and that is very, very positive. So yeah.
Thank you, Ábhishek. And those are fantastic quotes there, very well noted as well. And hopefully we'll be able to, I don't know, slap it on a banner somewhere at some point so that we can further empower and inspire people who are basically living with and traveling with the same disabilities as the two of you. So at this point, 6:05, I'm just going to wrap everything up right here. So massive thank you to you, Ábhishek, for jumping on. Massive thank you to you, Cherie, and Fox, who's been interpreting in the background, for being here despite the early morning and everything. And so this is the last hangout that we have this week. So we're probably going to have a few more scheduled for next week, but I will have to keep you guys updated via the Ripple Movement website. So all you have to do is just log onto the website, and on the front page itself, you will be able to find the article that's got the full schedule for this week's episodes, which you can rewatch on YouTube, as well as the future editions and the more that we're going to be doing in the future as well. So before I go on any further, I'd like to say a very, very heartfelt goodbye to all of you, and thank you for tuning in, as per usual, for those of you who are tuning in again from the other episodes, or for those of you who are tuning in for the first time. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking your time and come and listen to our projecteers and see what they have to say about the respective subjects and how much they care about them, and how much they want to basically share that message to the world. So it is, for now, goodbye from Ábhishek.
Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you all.
It is goodbye from Cherie and Fox.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
And it is, once again, in true Jeremy Paxman and University Challenge style, it is goodbye from me, Dylan. So have a lovely evening, and I will hopefully speak to you again soon. So goodbye.